Singapore's Minister for Foreign Affairs will now deliver his welcome address. Mr. Yeo, an alumnus of Cambridge and Harvard University, began his illustrious career with the Singapore Armed Forces as a signals officer. Swiftly rising in rank, he was promoted to Brigadier General of the Republic of Singapore Air Force before he entered politics in 1988. Since then, Mr. Yeo has been Minister for Finance, Minister for Information and the Arts, Minister for Trade and Industry, and presently holds the portfolio of Minister for Foreign Affairs. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. George Yeo to deliver his address. Mr. Yeo.
Dear friend, Professor Ibrahim Kambari, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all Singaporeans, I extend a warm welcome to all delegates representing over 270 universities from 60 countries. We are very honored to host this 20th session of WorldMUN. As a small city-state, Singapore's survival chances depend critically on an international system that is based on rules, and not one where might is right. It should therefore not be surprising that Singapore is an ardent supporter of the UN. The UN is the only international body that legitimately represents the will of the entire international community. It is where international norms are created. As a small country, we like the fact that all countries, regardless of size, are treated equally, more or less, in the general sense. Of course, powerful countries tend to have louder voices. We have to accept the reality. But small countries can unite, protect their interests, and advance their causes. Small countries comprise more than half the UN's membership. Some years ago, Singapore formed the Forum of Small States, FOSS, or FOSS, an informal grouping of all small states with populations of less than 10 million. FOSS meets regularly to exchange views on a wide range of issues and to give support to one another. And when we meet, we tell each other that the force is with you. We try to play a constructive role when we are able to. For example, the third conference on the law of the sea, which culminated in the adoption of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, in 1982, was chaired by a well-known Singapore diplomat, Professor Tommy Fo. All of us know that the UN is not always very efficient or effective. But we also know that there's no alternative to the UN. Take the current debate whether a no-flying zone should be established in Libya. While some countries, or group of countries, might want to act, most, if not all, acknowledge that UN support would be most desirable. Going alone, the way the US and its allies did in Iraq, proved unwise. Imagine a world where there's no UN. I think we would quickly have to create it. Of course, the UN, which was established more than 65 years ago, badly needs reform. But we should not be surprised that it is difficult to undertake major reforms in the UN, say of the Security Council, because that was the way the original charter was drawn up at the end of the Second World War. It was a grand bargain. Unless the permanent 5 countries, who were the victors of that war, are in agreement, no action can be taken on the most important issues because each has the right of veto. Reconciling the interests of 192 countries is also never easy, even in the best of times. Unless there's a very big crisis affecting the entire world, it is difficult to envisage radical reform of the UN. But we should not stop trying. By persevering, by making preparatory efforts, we will be able to turn a future crisis into an opportunity for change and for betterment. And we should not have to wait for another world war. When Lehman Brothers collapsed in September 2008, a huge financial crisis swept the world. And for a few months, we stared into an abyss. Because the UN and the Bretton Woods institutions were unable to respond, a group of 28 non-G20 countries which support the work of the G20, but believes that the G20 should be more transparent, inclusive, and consultative in the way decisions which affect everyone are taken. Singapore played an active role in the creation of the 3G in January last year. 3G refers to the grouping of these 28 non-G20 countries. It refers to the Global Governance Group, a name coined by the Foreign Minister of Liechtenstein. The aim of the 3G is to build a bridge between the G20 and the general membership of the UN. It meets regularly, and before every G20 meeting to make recommendations, and after every G20 meeting to give its reactions. All recommendations and reactions of the 3G are reported to the general membership of the UN. In this way, the 3G helps to overcome a dilemma for the G20. Well, on the one hand, the G20 does not want to be under the UN because that would make it ineffective. It also does not want to alienate the UN general membership because that would make its work illegitimate. If there were no global financial crisis, the G20 would not have taken off the way it did in 2008. Now that we have the G20, the world is in a better position to address future financial or economic crises which are bound to erupt sooner or later. The UN has to respond to this reality, that it could not have created the G20, but at the same time, it has recognized the work of the G20. The 3G is one such response, which has in turn forced the G20 to adjust. And the 3G countries meet members of the G20 regularly, in particular the current chair, whoever is the current chair. In this way, adjustments are made incrementally, not dramatically, and it is a process which is evolutionary and organic. And it's more useful to see UN reform as an organic process. Or it may be intellectually interesting to discuss how the UN could or should be redesigned from first principles in the light of 21st century conditions. That is simply not going to happen. At the same time, we must never be cynical and stop believing that the UN can be improved. And this is where you can play a role. I believe all of you participate in this World Model UN. Do so because you believe in the UN and are inspired by its lofty goals. Unless the nations of the world act in concert, how can we confront common challenges like climate change, nuclear proliferation, and international terrorism? And if a new Black Death, a murderous pandemic were to sweep the world, how can we not react together? And with the knowledge that now exists in the world, how can we still allow hundreds of millions of human beings to live in poverty and be afflicted by curable or preventable diseases. For your discussions to be productive, you have to temper your idealism by a sense of reality. But you should not be so weighed down by reality, as many diplomats in the UN are. Professor Gambari is an unusual exception, that you see little possibility of improvement. I just visited the UN after graduation, about as old as you are now. And I took many pictures, and I felt uplifted, inspired. Years later, I brought my children to the UN so that they too could have their photographs taken and be inspired, as you are inspired. And let you in turn inspire us, the so-called professionals, to do better.